Sempra Energy's latest financial report shows huge earnings to the tune of $2.6 billion. Good evening, I'm Jesse Pagan.
And I'm Kirsten Holmes in for Carlo and Marcella, also off this evening. Sempra is the parent company of SDG&E, the focus of our Amped Up series. We've been working to get you answers about those high energy bills. CBS 8's David Goffredson got his hands on the earnings report and took it to a local economist to find out what it could mean for you.
Full year 2021 earnings were $2,637 million.
During a live webcast on Friday morning, Sempra Energy not only reported $2.6 billion in adjusted earnings for 2021, the company's CEO, Jeff Martin, also laid out projected capital expenditures over the next 5 years.
Record 5-year capital plan of $36 billion, with nearly 94% dedicated to our utilities.
It's no surprise that most of Sempra's capital projects come from utilities like SDG&E because the company gets a built-in profit on those expenditures and ratepayers foot the bill. Currently, SDG&E's return on equity is 10.2%.
It strikes me as kind of high.
CBS 8 asked USD professor of economics Alan Ginn to take a look at Sempra's earnings.
I think consumers are probably going to be unhappy because they're paying these increased rates, the highest in the nation actually, and yet the company then is taking that and then giving it out as dividends to their shareholders, and they're also using it to repurchase stock, which is again benefiting the shareholders as opposed to the customers.
Meanwhile, up in San Francisco, SDG&E's attorneys have been arguing before the Public Utilities Commission this week that their company has been hit hard by the pandemic, and as a result, their profit rate should not be automatically reduced. SDG&E paid this financial expert more than $650 an hour to testify for the past 2 days in support of their argument that profits need to stay at 10% in order to attract capital investors. Down here in San Diego, Sempra's CEO had this to say Friday morning to shareholders.
We invested over $7 billion in critical energy infrastructure, a record amount for our company.
Sempra's earnings $2.6 billion are for all their companies, not just SDG&E. SDG&E's earnings, non-adjusted, for 2021 were reported at $819 million.
David, these are some big numbers we're talking about. Do we know anything about the future earnings projections for Sempra?
Sempra said their projected earnings over the next 5 years would be between 8% and 6% each year, so 6 to 8% each year annually. SDG&E rates are projected to go up 4.7% per year in the future.
All right, David Goffredson continuing our Amped Up coverage tonight. David, thank you. Meantime, don't forget you can text the word AMPED to 858-571-8888 to see all of this recent Amped Up coverage we're talking about, or to give your feedback to SDG&E.
New gun legislation announced today in San Diego. If passed, it would expand the list of convictions that ban criminals from owning guns. Current state law requires a 10-year ban on owning firearms for people convicted of certain misdemeanors. Assemblymember Brian Mainshane's bill would add child endangerment and elder abuse to that list. He says those who have committed violence in the past are more likely to commit gun crimes.
We often wonder as a society how we could have missed the signs. How did we allow this person to slide by without intervention or treatment? That's why I'm proud to introduce AB 2239.
San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria and City Attorney Mara Elliott also voiced their support for the new bill.
California's electric vehicle market is leading the nation with 1 million zero-emission cars sold in the state. That's 7 times more sales than the next leading state on the list. Governor Gavin Newsom personally rolled out the milestone car in Stockton earlier today. The governor is also pushing forward a $10 million package, which is expected to make electric cars more affordable. President Joe Biden talked on the phone with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for more than 30 minutes today as Russian forces moved closer to the capital.
The Biden administration now says it will join Europe in sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin. Natalie Brand reports from Washington.
Blasts shook Kyiv Friday as Russian forces continue to advance on Ukraine's capital. A senior U.S. defense official says the Russians have been slowed down by a resistant Ukrainian military bolstered by citizen volunteers.
The Russians are not, in every case, making the progress that they thought they were going to make.
But new satellite images show a large deployment of Russian ground troops and helicopters in Belarus near Ukraine's borders.
In a matter of days, we could see the capital fall.
NATO says it's activating its response force, marking the first time it will be used for collective security. Thousands more U.S. and allied troops make their way to the eastern flank.
There is no doubt about NATO's readiness to protect and defend all allies.
The Biden administration announced it's moving forward with sanctions on Russia's President Vladimir Putin.
In alignment with the decision by our European allies, the United States will join them in sanctioning President Putin and Foreign Minister Lavrov and members of the Russian National Security Team.
U.S. officials and members of Congress fear that if Putin succeeds in Ukraine, he could set his sights on other former Soviet countries.
No one knows for sure exactly where Mr. Putin's going to stop. And he's not telling us.
We have a solemn obligation to not look away.
The United Nations Security Council met Friday to vote on a resolution condemning Russia's attack on Ukraine, but it was vetoed by Russia. Natalie Brandt, CBS News, Washington.
The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas Greenfield, says she will take the resolution to the full General Assembly for consideration. There is also mounting pressure to cut off Russia from the international banking system known as SWIFT.
Solving our nation's homelessness crisis could cost $500 billion, and one California lawmaker has a plan to try and fund a chunk of it.
California Senator Alex Padilla has announced new legislation to tackle the problem. The proposal would invest $532 billion over the course of a decade. Our political reporter Morgan Reiner shows us how that money will be spent.
Hundreds of billions over 10 years to address the housing crisis.
Not recreating, a lot of bureaucracy, if you will, but investing in local programs that have proven to be successful and existing programs at the federal level.
But affordable housing projects are often met with opposition in California. Some cities and counties are still trying to find ways to avoid SB 9, the law the legislature passed last year that allows up to 2 duplexes on a single lot.
Projects like this, Home Key, are sometimes met with opposition from communities as well. So what's your message to the ongoing opposition that we see on the local level to certain things like this?
Yeah, look, it's not lost on me. I mentioned in my earlier remarks that my experience here started when I was in local government. And I remember as a member of the city council, we do this all the time, right?
He gave me a twofold response. First, invest in projects that communities find work for them. 2, investing in wraparound services like mental health care.
Once we demonstrate success, and people see more success through these investments, I also think communities will be more embracing of the initiative. So I'm not underestimating the challenges, because they are real and they're persistent, but I do think we're turning the corner.
Turning the corner in California, but what about the country? Another reporter asked how he'll get red state senators to get on board with an investment this size.
This is not a red state versus a blue state challenge, and this is not a red state versus blue state solution.